Hey everybody, and welcome back to a better version of myself. It's the end of the year again. 2024 is coming to a close, and 2025 is just around the corner. And I don't know about you guys, but I always get this surge of energy this time of year, thinking about fresh starts and positive changes we can make. So that's why I'm so excited for our deep dive today. We're going to be talking about New Year's resolutions and how to set goals that you can actually stick to so you can make 2025 your best year yet. And to help us with this, we have an expert on goal setting and behavioral change with us today. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be great. I've got a whole stack of research articles here.
Yeah.
All sorts of tips and advice. So let's just jump right in. First things first. Why do we even bother with these resolutions? It seems like everyone talks about them. But do they really make a difference?
Well, it's definitely more than just a tradition. There's this really fascinating psychological phenomenon called the fresh start effect. And that helps explain it. Researchers have found that things like the start of a new year or a birthday, even just the start of a new week, they can really boost our motivation. These moments kind of act as a mental reset button for us. We feel more optimistic about our ability to change.
That makes sense. I definitely feel more inspired at the beginning of something new. I think we all do. But I've also heard that most people give up on their resolutions pretty quickly. How can we avoid doing that?
Well, that's where the science of goal setting comes in. It's true, a lot of resolutions do fail. But research has shown that people who set resolutions are still significantly more likely to change their behavior than those who don't. It's really all about being intentional and strategic.
So even if we don't achieve the resolution perfectly, just setting it can have a positive impact. I like that. It takes a little bit of the pressure off. So let's say we're ready to set some resolutions. What's the first step to actually make them effective?
Choosing the right resolutions is key. It's not just about picking something we want to change. It's about setting goals that are aligned with our values and achievable and something we can actually sustain over time.
So how do we make sure we're choosing the right goals?
Well, there's a couple of strategies. You've probably heard of SMART goals before.
Right.
It stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound.
SMART goals.
Right.
Instead of just saying something vague like, I want to get in shape, a SMART goal would be something like, I want to run a 5K in 3 months.
Oh.
So that's specific, it's measurable, and it has a time frame.
Exactly. It's relevant to your overall goal of getting in shape. And attainable with proper training and preparation.
That's a really good way to break it down. One thing I struggle with is trying to do too much at once. Like I want to prove everything all at the same time. Have you seen any research that talks about that?
Absolutely. You're definitely not alone. There's some interesting research by Professor Richard Wiseman. He's a psychology professor who studied resolutions quite a bit, and he suggests focusing on just one resolution at a time. Now, that might sound counterintuitive, but when we spread ourselves too thin, we often end up burning out and we end up giving up altogether.
Wow, that's really interesting. Like that saying, chase 2 rabbits and you'll catch none. So we need to pick one resolution and focus our energy on that to increase our chances of success. So we've got our one awesome resolution. It's smart. We're feeling motivated. But what happens when things get tough?
Well, that's why we need to make a plan. A resolution shouldn't just be a wish. It needs to be a roadmap.
A plan of action.
Exactly. We can't just decide on a goal. We need to outline the steps to take to actually get there. We need to try to anticipate the challenges we're going to face and come up with strategies to overcome those challenges. That way, when those bumps in the road come up, we're prepared to navigate them.
So planning is key. We're setting ourselves up for success by anticipating those obstacles instead of being surprised by them.
Exactly. It's like packing for a trip. If you just throw random things in your suitcase, you're going to forget essential things, and you're going to have a mess. But if you pack strategically, you'll have what you need when you need it.
I love that analogy. That's a really good point. But what happens when we hit those inevitable setbacks, even with a plan? Life happens. Our motivation dips. We might even feel like giving up. How do we deal with those tough moments?
Well, that's where self-compassion is so important. Change is a process. It's not something that just happens overnight. Setbacks are normal, and they can actually be really valuable learning experiences. We have to try to view them not as failures, but as opportunities to adjust our approach.
So instead of beating ourselves up for messing up, we should look at it as feedback.
Exactly. Ask yourself, what happened? What caused this to happen? What can I learn from this? And instead of seeing it as a reason to quit, we need to see it as a chance to get better, a chance to refine our strategy.
That's a much better way to think about it, much more empowering.
It is. And remember, you don't have to go it alone. Support systems are incredibly powerful when we're trying to achieve our goals.
Okay, that's a great place to stop for now. We've talked about the psychology behind resolutions. We've talked about SMART goals and how important planning is and how important it is to prepare for those setbacks that'll happen.
And we've talked about remembering to be kind to ourselves, being compassionate to ourselves throughout the process.
That's right. It seems like we're off to a good start. We'll be back in the next part with more insights to help make 2025 your best year yet.
Welcome back to our deep dive on New Year's resolutions. This has been a really great conversation so far.
I know, I'm really enjoying it too. It's so interesting how much goes into this, like all the psychology and strategies involved in setting ourselves up for success. Last time we talked about picking the right resolutions and making sure they're smart and how crucial it is to plan ahead.
Right. And we also talked about remembering to be kind to ourselves when we have setbacks.
Yes, exactly. But how do we actually stick with our resolutions? After that initial excitement wears off, I think that's something we all struggle with.
Absolutely. That's a great question. You know that New Year's energy does tend to fade. Life gets in the way, and our resolutions end up on the back burner.
Exactly. So what are some tips for maintaining that momentum?
Well, one really powerful strategy is to break down those big goals into smaller steps.
That makes sense. Sometimes I get overwhelmed just thinking about the whole goal, and I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. If you only look at the huge goal, it can be really daunting. But if you just focus on taking one step at a time, those small wins start to build on each other, and the journey becomes much more manageable.
So it's all about those smaller milestones that help us actually see the progress we're making.
Exactly. And each little victory keeps us motivated to keep going. For example, let's say your goal is to write a novel. Don't get intimidated by thinking about writing hundreds of pages. Break it down into daily goals. Maybe just 500 words a day.
Right. Or even weekly goals,
Yeah.
like finishing a chapter each week. It's about finding what works best for you and making consistent progress without getting overwhelmed.
Exactly. And as you reach each milestone, you get that sense of accomplishment, and that positive feeling makes you want to keep moving forward.
I love that. So we've got our SMART goals. We've broken them down into smaller steps. But what about when our motivation just dips?
Yeah.
Even when we're doing all the right things. Life happens. Old habits come back. How do we get back on track when we're in a slump?
Well, this is where those support systems we talked about become really important. Having someone to cheer you on, someone to hold you accountable, it can make all the difference.
It's like having your own personal cheerleader, reminding you why you started in the first place, giving you encouragement when you need it.
Exactly. And sometimes just having someone to listen to your struggles, someone who understands what you're going through, can help you regain perspective and get back on track. And it's also important to celebrate your successes, even the small ones. Share those wins with your supporters. It can really reinforce your commitment to your goal.
I totally agree. It's so powerful to connect with people who are on similar journeys. Like, we're all in this together.
We are. And even when you have that support system, there will be times when you have to rely on yourself. So in those moments when your motivation is low, take some time to reflect. Ask yourself why you're feeling discouraged. Is it because the goal isn't relevant to you anymore, or are you running into obstacles that you didn't anticipate?
Right. It's easy to get caught up in those feelings. But taking a step back to really analyze why we're feeling that way can be so helpful. We might even realize that we need to change the goal.
Absolutely. Being flexible is key when it comes to achieving our goals.
Well,
Life is unpredictable. Our goals need to be able to change too.
so it's not about sticking to the original plan no matter what. It's about being adaptable, willing to make changes when we need to.
Exactly. And sometimes we need to look at setbacks as opportunities for learning and growth. Like imagine your goal was to run a marathon, but you get injured a few weeks before the race. What would you do?
Oh man, that would be so devastating. It'd be easy to just give up on the goal completely. But it sounds like there's a better way to handle that.
There is. First, you have to acknowledge that you're disappointed. It's normal to feel frustrated, even defeated when something like that happens. Let yourself process those emotions, but then shift your focus to the things you can control. So if you're injured, focus on your recovery. Set smaller goals that will help you get better.
So instead of thinking about the marathon, I can't run. I could focus on getting my strength back. Maybe set a goal to walk a certain distance every day.
Exactly. It's about finding ways to keep moving forward, even if it's not in the exact direction you plan. And who knows, maybe that change will lead to something even better, something you hadn't even thought of before.
That's a great way to look at it. Those setbacks can sometimes lead to new opportunities.
They can. And remember, every setback is a chance to learn and grow. Think about what happened. what you could have done differently, and use that to prevent similar setbacks in the future.
I love that. We're turning those challenges into valuable lessons.
Exactly. And that process of learning and adapting is important for everything in life, not just achieving goals.
I'm so glad we're talking about this. We're not just learning how to reach our goals. We're learning how to be more resilient, how to adapt,
Hmm.
and how to be more self-aware.
Right. That's the best thing about setting goals. It's not just about getting to the finish line. It's about the journey. And we're not done yet. We still have more to explore.
Yes, we do.
Aye.
In the last part of our deep dive, we'll talk about celebrating our successes. And we'll leave you with some questions to think about as you start working on your goals for 2025.
We're excited to wrap it all up and give you some more inspiration and some more strategies you can use to make 2025 your best year yet. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to a better version of myself. We're wrapping up our deep dive into New Year's resolutions, and I feel like we learned so much already.
Me too. We've talked about so many important things: setting smart goals, making plans, dealing with setbacks,
Yeah.
building support systems.
Right, and we talked about being flexible and adapting our goals, which is so important. But before we wrap up, I want to talk about one more thing: celebrating our wins.
Yes, absolutely. We often get so focused on the end goal that we forget to appreciate the progress we make along the way.
I know, I do that all the time.
Yeah.
We get so caught up in what we haven't achieved yet,
Yeah.
but we don't even notice the small victories.
Right. It's like we're climbing a mountain and we're only looking at the summit. We don't even see the amazing view.
I love that analogy. So how can we get better at celebrating those wins? The big ones and the small ones.
Well, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Sometimes it's just about taking a moment to appreciate how far you've come.
Like giving ourselves a pat on the back.
Exactly. Or maybe tell someone you're close to about your accomplishment. Or even just treat yourself to something you enjoy.
That's a great idea. So we're basically creating positive associations with our progress.
Exactly. When we do that, it feels good to keep going. It makes us want to stick with it.
This has been such a great conversation. We've learned so much. But now it's up to all of you to take what we've talked about and create a journey that's right for you. So any final thoughts?
Just remember that resolutions aren't about being perfect. They're about growing and learning about ourselves. Enjoy the journey, even when it's challenging. And don't forget to celebrate those wins along the way.
I love that. Success isn't just about the end goal. It's about who we become along the way. And on that note, we want to hear from you guys. Share your thoughts in the comments. Share your insights, even your struggles. We're all in this together.
We are. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to A Better Version of Myself for more tips on personal growth.
Thank you so much for joining us. Here's to making 2025 a year of growth and positive change and lots of small victories to celebrate.